Nice to meet you, Brent.
How's it going, guys?
Rocking, yeah, really good. Thanks for your patience, mate. Sorry we're a bit late. I know the tide and time wait for no man around here.
How incredible is this mangrove system? We're here where the two Johnston rivers meet, an iconic part of the beautiful Cassowary coast.
And stoked to be here with the legends from Snapping Tours. We're here in search of the king of the creeks, the saltwater crocodile. Here he is.
Maybe this one's grandfather.
We'll see how we go. Strict over here. Is that one on the bank there?
On the bank, yeah. I reckon this one.
Yeah, we're on. Look at him. Oh, he's a bloody beauty.
This is a full banger. What? Woohoo! How's it, bro? How good is that? Yeah.
Captain. Cheers, man. Beauty. Cheers, fellas. Crack her afternoon. Thanks for having us. Great way to spend the afternoon. Beautiful.
Fellow councillors, staff and residents viewing via live stream, good morning all and welcome. I acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of the land on which this meeting is being held and pay my respect to the elders past, present and emerging. Do we have any apologies, councillors? No apologies? Okay. The declaration of prescribed conflicts of interest or declarable conflicts of interest. Please use this opportunity to make public any prescribed conflict of interest or declarable conflict of interest in respect of the items in the agenda. Councillors should use this opportunity to disclose and or comment on other councillors and or staff interests in accordance with the Act and the regulations. Any declarations to declare, councillors? No? Okay, we'll move into item 1, confirmation of the minutes. The special meeting held on the 19th of September 2020. Would somebody move that they were true and accurate record, please? Oh, October. Thank you, Councillor Tui. The 19th of October 2020. Somebody move they were true and accurate record. Moved by Councillor Tui, seconded by Councillor Pervin. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. The minutes of the meeting 22nd of October 2020. Move that they were true and accurate record.
Through the chair, I just need to bring to your attention that in the minutes 1.2 of the meeting, it was put down that I had left the room, and it actually wasn't myself that left the room. It was actually Councillor Pervin that left the room and re-entered. So if we could just amend that, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Have you got that recorded, Mr. CEO? Yep. Okay, the minutes of the meeting on the 22nd of October 2020. Somebody move that true and accurate record, please. Moved by Councillor Barnes, seconded by Councillor Farinelli. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The special meeting on the 27th of October 2020. Somebody move that true and accurate. Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Any business arising from any of those 3 minutes, councillors? Okay, I'll take that as a no. We move into item 3 and 3.1, the CCRC Tourism Monthly Report, and Mr. Blanchett will present this report. Welcome, Mr. Blanchett.
Morning, Mr. Blanchett.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor and councillors. So thank you. Here we go with the tourism report for October. If I may, I'd just like to start by recognising the week of NAIDOC. Just checking the sound and red light is on. Yep, red light is on. Thank you. So if I may, I'd just like to start by recognising NAIDOC Week, and we have had a wonderful start this week with the opening of a Bush Tucker Garden first thing Monday morning in Kabul. There'll be more on that in my November report for tourism. but just to recognise that was a special moment with the Girramay people in Girrigan, and a great way for our team to proudly start NAIDOC Week. Further in the report, taking it as read, I just want to talk about the Cairns Expo, just to highlight a few of the features there. So this is the region's largest outdoor adventure, home and lifestyle expo. So we had IVAN present at the expo, which had over 12,000 people attend in the 3 days of the expo. This is a really important market for us. It's within 400 kilometres. 90 to 95% of the customers were from Cairns, so a very good market that can visit us holiday on the Cassowary Coast several times a year. The key objectives for us in attending the expo were to obviously raise our destination exposure. The 102 things played a big part in that, through visuals and an actual list of the 102 things to do. It also was part of the interaction, so we had a postcard competition which proved very valuable. Mr. Mayor, the way to enter the competition was to pick your number one thing to do on the Cassowary Coast. So with over 340 entries in this competition, and in collaboration with our tourism industry through TCT, Tropical Coast Tourism, we've now got a list, a 350 odd list of what people want to do on the Cassowary Coast, which will help further targeted marketing, whether that be fishing or wine on the beach, or just going to a tropical island. So that will be a good tool going forward with TCT. Economic diversity was also another aspect, to be able to talk more about the lower profile, the hidden gems in our destination. Given the theme of this particular expo was around adventure, boating, and there were a lot of families, so some of our lower profile adventures like the Misty Mountain four-wheel driving and the Kurrama Range Road were quite topical at this expo. And also in the adventure theme, we have some very good adventure camping options with 6 islands you can camp on, and some of our national park camping. So those were the key themes presented during the few days. And of course, a critical part was our partnership with the tourism industry. So with, again, collaborating with the industry through TCT, products were invited to come and be part of the expo with us at the IVAN, and we did have a product uptake on that, and we hope to have more of that at future expos. Finally, just a couple of points about the statistics at the end. I guess the main hurt this year is not having the Tully Mill tour. You'll see in the figures that we have nearly 1,800 visitors last year do that tour. So while it's understandable in the year of COVID the tour couldn't operate, we desperately hope for Destination Tully that we have that tour back next year. Most importantly for the visitors, the disappointment of the visitors that couldn't be serviced with that tour. Finally, the average, on a positive, the average RV stay in Tully was up for the month over the year, so the not so new facilities there are proving positive for the RV visitors through the year. And just in summary, the visitors are different this year. As you'll see, we're normally getting roughly 23% internationals this time of year, where we're getting none. So we're noticing a lot of Queenslanders revisiting Queensland from the conversations we're having, and that's quite a noticeable trend in the visitors at the moment. Finally, the campaigns targeting Townsville and Cairns have proved fairly successful on the ground. So that would be my summary of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchett. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Chewy.
Good morning, Mr. Blanchett. Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just curiosity, could you remember, Mr. Blanchett, what the number one thing might have been on those postcards? And if you do, would you like to share?
Thank you, Councillor. It's not a matter of memory, we're actually collating the list. So there were some obvious highlights. Fishing was quite a big one. There was a lot of relaxation. And given the theme, camping and the four-wheel driving was probably a new one that we don't talk about so much, that bubbled up.
So from that, thank you. I guess it's sounding like it was more of experience as opposed to particular destination, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yep, through the chair, that was from the conversations. We try to find out their interests, what they're looking for, what they want to do. And invariably in that market, a lot of them by habit go north, not south. So we were using the turn left conversation a lot. And when we know their interests, we connect them with that interest in our destination. But to answer your first question, we will have a word map. We will have the results of that. And it'll be quite useful data for us as well as for the marketing going forward.
Any further questions for Mr. Blanchett? I'd just like to make a comment about the Cardboard Bush Tucker Garden. We have welcome to country at the beginning of every event, very important, but we need to walk the talk, and I think caring for country with the Bush Tucker Garden and the partnership Girramay and Council have formed is a real effort in terms of closing the gap. So I just want to compliment the staff. It was a great day. It'll be on that list of 103 to see, no doubt. It was 102, I think it's 103 now. People passing through Cardboard should visit that garden. The product that will come from those 8 plants that are in there at the moment is not just about human consumption, it's also medicinal. So I learned a bit on the day as well. I can't pronounce any of the traditional owner plants, but it was a wonderful event. And as I said, we are now walking the talk in terms of our partnership with the traditional owners. Thanks, Mr. Blanchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further questions? It's moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to item 4, Governance, Environment and Finance, and 4.1, the 3-monthly budget review. And Ms Bradley will present this report. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Ms Bradley.
So this morning I have for you our budget review for our first quarter until the 30th September 2020. So the purpose of the review is to promote financial management and accountability by having each director and manager review in detail the components of their budget within their areas of responsibility. It's anticipated that there are further changes may be likely as the financial year progresses. However, this shouldn't impact the overall figures at this point in time. The capital budget in particular is reviewed as part of this first quarter budget review in order to detail final carryover figures for the financial year ending 30 June 2020. So a review of the operational budget has resulted in recognition of additional revenue and expenditure and adjustments between departments, which is presented in this report. This will have a nil effect on our net result of the original budget. However, reduced interest rates will need to be monitored closely going forward. Several budget risks have also been mitigated as part of this budget review. However, there's still some additional budget risks that I'll discuss further down this report that will need to be monitored as the year progresses. So firstly, the capital budget. So it was estimated that a carry forward figure of 19.95 million be included for capital works from the 1920 budget to be completed in the 2021 financial year. A detailed review has now been completed, which has taken into consideration accruals, actual spend, additional grant funding, and Council's ability to deliver. This has resulted in an increase in carry forward figures of 4.4 million to a total of 24.36 million. The figure includes both carryover and savings from projects that have been reallocated to new projects in the revised budget, offset by projects that have been deferred to 2021 financial year. In addition to this, funding that was received last financial year will now be received in 2021, including DRFA for 2018 and 2019 events totalling 8.9 million, Works for Queensland Round 3 at 1.8 million, Tully Grandstand at 2.25 million, and Bulgan Reservoir at 662,000. Council's also received approval for the DRFA betterment submissions in relation to the 2019 flood event, totalling 2.4 million, Works for Queensland COVID at 1.1 million, and TIDS funding for Cowley Creek Bridge of 220,000. So the budget review includes 3 million for purchases of plant items as a result of anticipated changes in the operating model at Council's transfer stations and landfill facilities in 2021. This is intended to be funded by a loan facilitated through QTC or Queensland Treasury Corporation, with anticipated borrowing rates currently around 1%. This will allow Council the opportunity to offset the current interest rate risk by locking in low rate over the life of the loan and minimise the impact on Council's cash flow as a result of COVID-19. So the original and revised capital budget summary are provided in Appendix G to this report. Secondly, our operating budget. So a review of the operating budget was also undertaken at the end of September, and the table on the second page of this report highlights Council's current financial position as at 30th of September 2020. Council has set an operational savings target of $275,000 for this financial year, which Council will continue working towards to deliver. This will be achieved throughout the year via a number of initiatives designed to identify savings to deliver a surplus operational result for 2021. So in the table on the second page, there's a few items to highlight. Firstly, interest is currently year to date tracking under budget due to lower than anticipated interest rates by $140,000, and also due to the extension of Council's discount period, which has resulted in revenue interest charges not being calculated at the time that this report was run. The second item to note is our operational grants for a full year budget, which has increased due to funding for Works for Queensland COVID program of $1.3 million and external works for the Innisfail Bowls Club at $1.2 million, with a corresponding increase in materials and services for consultants. Council has to ensure both these projects are delivered within the designated timeframe and budget. Third item to note is employee expenditure year to date, currently tracking under budget due to vacant positions either unfilled or filled by contract labour. Item number 4, year to date contract labour is over budget in parks and roads, which is offset by reduced employee expenses and partially offset by filled positions in the water department. Number 5 is materials and services, year to date tracking under budget, relating to the timing of invoices for transfer stations, waste levy, reduced fuel costs and maintenance expenditure. And the full year budget has increased by $2.6 million, primarily due to the Innisfail Bowls Club and Works for Queensland COVID projects, both offset by operational grant funding. And lastly, the full year capital grant budgets has increased due to the DRFA 2018 and 2019 events, the Works for Queensland Round 3, Tully Grandstand and Bulgan Reservoir as discussed. Council's also received approval for DRFA betterment submissions in relation to the 2019 flood event and Works for Queensland COVID, as well as additional TIDS funding for Cowley Creek, offset by a reduction in Upper Darragee funding. Over the last quarter, it's been noted that some of the changes are required on budget line items within various programs of Council. At this stage, there's no increase or decrease in the overall operational budget position, and these changes are detailed in Appendix E and F. Budget risks that I mentioned before. So throughout the year, management identify and monitor budget risks that come up that have the potential to impact Council's performance. Some of the areas that those budget risks have not been mitigated as part of this review include our asset rationalisation, with the $400,000 still to be realised, work cover insurance of $60,000 still to be mitigated, Port Hinchinbrook dredging study at $50,000 with funding allocated in the previous year, and operational efficiencies as discussed at $275,000. In addition to this, as part of our budget review, Council adopts our long-term financial plan. And as mentioned, we are looking at putting forward a loan of $3 million for our waste facilities. So as part of that, Council's debt policy needs to be updated in order to provide to QTC for consideration of that loan application. So as such, we have amended the resolution for this budget review to include our debt policy for adoption as well. The only change in this policy compared to previous policies was the addition of Appendix A, which has a table stating that $3 million anticipated loan in this financial year for a 10-year period. And so the resolution as it stands is for Council to the budget review for the 3 months to 30th September be received. The amended budget for 2021 is outlined in the attached appendices be approved, and Council adopts the revised debt policy.
Thank you, Ms Bradley. Councillors, any questions in relation to the revised recommendation? If not, would somebody move the revised recommendation? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Bradley.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bradley.
Thank you.
We move on to item 4.2, the final audit report, and this will be presented by Ms Bradley.
Good morning again. So the Queensland Audit Office has advised Council that it has received an unmodified audit opinion on Council's financial statements for the 2019-2020 financial year. No significant deficiencies from the current year and previous year were identified during the final audit. So QAO have advised that all procedures have been completed, that the financial statements for 2019 and 20 have been reviewed, and that QAO has issued the unmodified audit opinion. Council's financial sustainability has been assessed at a moderate risk, as 2 of the 3 5-year average ratios are outside of the target range. The operating surplus ratio is averaged at -2%, with a target of between 0 and 5%. The net financial liabilities ratio is averaged at -26%, with a target of less than 60%. And the asset sustainability ratio is averaged at 90%, with a target of greater than 90%. So during the external audit, Council's assessed on its effectiveness of the financial statement preparation process using a traffic light system. Council's received a green traffic light for the year-end close processes, indicating that all 5 key processes were completed by the amended milestones. An amber light was received for timeliness of the financial statements, which remain legally compliant still. And an amber light was given for the quality of the draft financial statements, which is an improvement on the red light given in 2018-2019. All issues that have been identified, together with recommendations for appropriate action, as well as management's response, have been included in the 2020 closing report that's attached to this one. So Appendix A1, A2, A3 below contain a summary of those issues that were identified or resolved. So the current year internal control issues, there was one raised regarding the accuracy of renewal assessment. Council's undertaking a business process re-engineering project at the moment that's going to look to address that particular issue, with an action date set for December 20. Current year financial reporting issues, there was one raised in relation to indexation of current year capital additions. Management does not share the same view as the auditors in relation to this, and it's expected to be resolved in the interim audit. Matters previously reported on internal controls. So you'll notice in this table, the first 3 issues from last financial year have been resolved as part of the audit process. Outstanding still is disposals, which is also part of the business process re-engineering project, expected for completion in December. The next 3 items have been resolved throughout the year as well. The review of daily takings based in Tully is expected to be cleared as part of the interim audit in May. The next item has been resolved, and then lastly, employee acknowledgement of IT systems and computer use policies is anticipated to be resolved as part of the interim audit as well. Matters previously reported relating to financial reporting issues. The first one has been resolved. The second one regarding contractual commitments. So corrective actions have been put in place in relation to this and reiterated to the rest of the business to ensure that we can resolve this as part of our interim audit next year. And the last one has been resolved there too. Other matters that have been raised, one of them has been resolved, and the last one is timeliness of payroll certificates, which is anticipated to be resolved as part of the interim audit as well. So Council will work towards mitigating any of those unresolved and new risks identified in the above tables. And I'd like to share a big thank you to the finance team and the other departments for their assistance in achieving this unmodified audit opinion, as well as the number of previous year issues that Council was able to resolve over the financial year. One last thing I'd like to note is Council's financial sustainability risk rating is moderate, as discussed. So in order to mitigate this risk going forward, Council needs to focus on delivering a surplus operating result by raising additional revenue or undertaking several reviews to reduce operating expenditure. Council's asset sustainability ratio has improved since last financial year, however is at the lowest point of the target range. The asset sustainability ratio will need to improve with a greater emphasis on asset renewals and better understanding of intervention levels, or the level of service assets currently provided to the community. And Council's capital program and budget process have been recently aligned with the adopted asset management plans, and this will assist with mitigating this risk moving forward also.
Thank you, Ms Bradley. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Baines.
Less a question, Mr. Mayor, and more compliment to the crew. I mean, I know you've mentioned it already, Miss Bradley, but in this very, very trying year we have had of 2020, and the excellent works of yourself, Mr. Singh, and the team, you've brought us back with another unmodified result, and the improvements that you've already touched upon that we've been able to achieve during this period, it's just been a wonder to see. That it still boggles me how you guys do it, but I'd just like to pass my compliments through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Any further comments, councillors? Councillor Farinelli.
Compliments, and I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Chewy. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass on the appreciation to the team.
Yep. Item 4.3, adoption of the annual report, and Mr. Singh will speak to this report. Mr. Singh.
Good morning, all.
Morning.
Yeah,
Mr. Singh.
Councillors, in front of us this morning is our annual report for 2019-20. As part of section 182 of the local government regulation, we are required to adopt the annual report within 1 month of the audit opinion being issued. As Ms. Bradley highlighted a while ago, the audit committee and the QAO is happy, and they have signed off on our financials and issued a unmodified opinion. So, councillors, the annual report itself, it contains Council's audited financial statements for 2019-20, and it also includes other reportable information and provides an overview of Council's operations. The scope of the report itself includes our regional profile, it includes the corporate vision, mission and values, the Mayor's and the Chief Executive's report, corporate performance, legislative information, and also the copy of the audited financial statements are normally provided as part of the report. So, councillors, what I'll do next is actually go through the actual copy of the annual report. We have identified some minor tweaks and changes that we probably need to make to the annual report itself, and also highlight some of the achievements for the year. So, just with the report itself, councillors, so on the first page it talks about our regional profile, which is on page 1 and 2 of the report. It covers our council's vision, mission and core values, and also from there on page 3 and 4 we have the Mayor's statement and also the CEO's statement. So in relation to the Mayor's statement, councillors, so just please note there's a minor change to paragraph 4, which starts off with council contributed to the Cassowary Coast region around $38.3 million in terms of local spend. Just a typo in there, which should be through, not just through. So there's a minor change on that page. In terms of the actual achievements, so again, just highlighting the importance of us managing our 1.7 billion worth of assets, and also council being able to maintain and sustain our service levels despite the challenges of COVID-19. And I think the Mayor kindly also highlights the fact that we are working towards the initiative of asset rationalisation, which is something that is on Council's agenda. And from a CEO's perspective, I guess, in terms of us, we're still maintaining our debt zero balance, and also there is sufficient cash balance which is able to allow councils to sustain some of our short-term and long-term commitments. So that is something that council is able to achieve going forward. And in terms of some of the other highlights for the year, we have delivered obviously the Bulgan Reservoir, we have delivered the Tully Grandstand, the Flying Fish Point seawalls, we have been able to hold the Red Bull Defiance event, and also the Targa Great Barrier Reef event, the mountain biking track initiatives in Cardwell. are some of the highlights for the year, and then at the same time acknowledging the challenges of COVID-19, mainly starting from around Feb and March, and our ability to transition and allow people to work from home, and at the same time I guess council's ability to still employ and keep most of our workforce engaged, even though we had challenges delivering some of the capital projects. So it has been a fairly challenging year for us. Just going to page 5 and 6, councillors. So again, just the profile and the distribution of our council divisions. I must highlight at the bottom of page 5 the mayor's role and responsibilities, and also the meeting dates. So what we'll do is amend that section slightly to incorporate our existing arrangement, which is generally driven by COVID-19. So that's something that isn't mentioned there. So we will include that particular component in the report. Pages 7 and 8 talks about the structure and also some of the some of the other activities that sort of highlight to the community that council is diverse, and we also have programs that allows us to recruit young staff and also provide mentors going forward. So council in the last couple of years has been quite active in terms of keeping our younger people employed through our traineeship and apprenticeship program. So that is something that we are still committed to. And councillors, so from there on we have our key goals. So one of the first ones is our growth and economic sustainability is one of our key pillars, and on that page it sort of highlights some of the key things that we have delivered in relation to that particular goal. Without going through each of them, that's covered on page 10. Then page 11, 12, 13 cover the other key goals, one being community first, the other one sustainable infrastructure, and also the last one which talks about responsible governance. And councillors, again just highlighting some of the major achievement that the team has achieved for the year. And when we look at it in the scheme of things, there's a lot of work that has been done in the last 12 months. Councillors, from there on, the pages that follow, page 15 starts off with the statutory information, our key obligations around the council's legislative frameworks, particularly covering our business activities, the travel arrangements, community grants, our executive remuneration and expense reimbursement policies are sort of covered. And then on page 17, 18, we do provide community a fair bit of detail around what councillors have been able to achieve and how much they get from a remuneration point of view, which is fairly highlighted in the tables that are there. And then councillors 19 and 20 sort of follows through a similar pattern. On page 21, I just wanted to flag at the moment the commentary on page 21 around Rights to Information Act talks about the table below outlines the various applications received for the past 7 years. But as you can see, the table underneath actually has got just the 3 years of data, so we will amend that to reflect the past 3 years, not the past 7 years. So that's a minor change. Again, in terms of our commitment to governance, the section also covers the roles and responsibilities of the audit committee and who are on the audit committee, and also the number of meetings that were held and what is mainly covered by the audit committee for the year. And then following on from there, we also highlight our commitment to the community, particularly when it comes to rebates and concessions for rates and charges, is something that is also covered on page 22. Equal employment opportunities and anti-discrimination policies and human rights acts are also covered on page 23-24, councillors. And then to finish off with governance on page 25, which also covers our ERM, which is our enterprise risk management and information on insurance. Council, we have provided for our readers a bit more simplified version of our financial statements, which is captured in the community financial reports, which is on page 27. So again, the theme is similar to what Ms. Bradley sort of mentioned earlier. If we look at our net results, so when we say net results, it includes both capital and operational results. So council has managed to deliver a surplus figure of 3.38 million. even though when we take out the capital component, we are in a deficit figure. But overall, I think it's a good result, and generally there is a positive figure when it comes to looking at both OPEX and CAPEX. And also on page 28, it sort of covers in the lovely graph on page 29, probably gives the community a bit of information. It also identifies where most of our revenue sources are from, and it also demonstrates our reliance on rates and levies, and at the moment 80% of our revenue actually comes from rates and levies. And in terms of where we're spending the money, councillors, so generally the four key components and the three main ones for us are employee expenses, materials and services, and finance cost. And as you can see, employee expenses are sitting at around 32%, depreciation at 32%, and materials and services at 35%. In terms of the other lovely graphs going on from page on page 30 and 31, 32 highlights clearly our asset figures, and also highlights the fact that council is moving forward in terms of our commitment to our community around services that some of the assets provide. And in terms of liabilities, as you can see, we are in a fairly healthy position when it comes to cash flow and also liabilities. So councillors, overall on page 33, page 33 highlights our cash position. So one of the key things that we can see this year is that our cash balances has slightly reduced compared to previous years, but it also demonstrates that we are delivering a number of external walks, and mainly what happens is we do pay for those walks up front, and we tend to pick up the money later on. So with the DRFA funded projects and also the Tully Grandstand, there's a fair component of the cash contribution that will come to us this year, and that's something that we need to be mindful of. Otherwise, someone could draw a perception that we have dropped when it comes to cash balances. So it is also a timing lag that we need to be mindful of. And overall, going forward, councillors, so from there on, the next couple of graphs sort of highlight what our forecasted figures are. Just be mindful that when we did prepare the annual report, these forecasted figures are actually based from our financial statements, which are based on our adopted budget. And as Ms. Bradley has presented earlier, we have now our amended budget and long-term financial forecast. And the challenge for council moving forward is to continue to diversify our revenue source, consolidate our revenue positions, and continue to do work on services and understanding how much it's costing us to deliver services, and then also looking at strategies that could promote and bring in more growth into the region if possible, and also investing in the right strategies going forward to obviously stimulate the area. It would be some of the key things that council will be working on, and I think that one of the key strategies that council will start working on going forward is obviously our corporate plan. So that would be something that drives the changes going forward. Without going into a similar sort of level of detail for the financial statements, I'm happy to take questions, councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Any questions for the officer? I've got no questions, but I'll just make a couple of complimentary statements. A unmodified audit in the previous report. In a very tough year, the lowest rate increase in 12 years, general rate. The primary production contribution to the rate take, again reduced as per the rate referencing group recommendations. Youth development, we'd not only have apprentices and traineeships being taken up in our workforce, we have the mentoring program with the Innisfail State College, where students that normally got suspended now come on board and go into our depot or into our library to learn real life skills and be more employable in the future. The Diverse Learning Centre, intellectually disabled students are now coming on board in mentoring sense into our library and getting one-on-one maintenance management. So we've achieved a lot in youth development in the year, and also the introduction of the sports bursaries, again putting money back into our youth to help them go to higher levels with their sporting achievements. So in all, I think it's been a great annual report, and compliments to you too, Mr. Singh, on your leadership of the Finance Department. From memory, we've had a long string of unmodified audits now, and it's a reflection of the wonderful staff we have working in the Finance Department. Any further comments, councillors? Yeah, Mr. Singh.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for that. And before I finish off, councillors, I just wanted to thank Kate Headley for putting this report for us. She has done a massive job in compiling the data and liaising with the staff, particularly with some of the challenges that she's faced with her section. So I just wanted to thank her, and also at the same time others who have contributed. So, but I think a fair chunk of the recognition goes towards Kate. So thank you for that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that. Any further questions? Would somebody move the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Pervin. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to item 4.4, election of the LGAQ Association Policy Representative, and the CEO will present this report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, I'll depart a little from the formal presentation of the report and ask that Council might recognise the fine contribution that Mayor Bob Manning has made to the association over several terms. That being said, the Local Government Association of Queensland Policy Executive now has a vacancy for our district, District 10, which is made up of Cairns, ourselves, Cook, Douglas, Mareeba, Tablelands and Torres Shire, all of which enjoy 2 votes, with the exception of Cairns, which enjoys 6 votes. The election nominations must be received by the Local Government Association of Queensland by next Wednesday, and in broad terms the role of the representative include taking care of the overall interests of local government within Queensland, representing each of the various districts' interests at a policy executive level, contributing to the executive decision making and facilitating and assisting relationships between the various members and the local government association generally. The recommendation before you, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, is that Cassowary Coast Regional Council nominates Councillor Peter Scott, the Mayor of Cook Shire Council, who has, in my submission to Council, Mr. Chairman, the experience and the knowledge and the most certainly the ability to represent those interests effectively and well, and that if that recommendation is accepted, Council proceed to provide that nomination to the association by next Wednesday afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any questions for the CEO on that report? Councillor Baines.
Just a comment, I think, through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, Mr. Scott's been heavily involved in the FNQ ROC committees, vice chair of the FNQ ROC itself. He's been chair of the Roads Committee. He is well experienced. Councillor Scott has worked well with Councillor Manning over the years, and I think he's well aware of the issues across the entire region. I speak to Councillor Scott fairly regularly. He's also very concerned about issues in our region in particular, and I think it's a great nomination, and I would move it if appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Baines. The seconder, Councillor Barnes. Any further comments, councillors?
Through you, Mr.
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I should have added that I've spoken with Mayor Scott directly, and he will accept the nomination, Mr. Chairman.
Very good.
Important that I should have pointed that out earlier.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to item 4.5, future meeting dates and venues. Before we have a discussion, I just want to highlight a direction I've given to the CEO on this matter. Having some regard for the federal government's position in respect of COVID-19 extending into next year and the anticipated opening of state borders, I have decided, in accordance with the regulations, to instruct the CEO to as follows. 1. Until the end of March 2021, the council meetings will be closed to the public. 2, the meetings will continue to be live streamed from Tully. And 3, council information sessions and workshops will be held in Innisfail. Okay, you want to speak to your report, Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, with your permission, I'll go straight to the recommendation. Having taken that instruction from you, the recommendation is that Council resolves to hold only one local government meeting in January 2021 here, obviously on the 21st of January 2021, that we conduct local government meetings on the 2nd and 4th Thursday of each month for February and March 2021, dates being Thursday the 11th of February, Thursday the 25th of February, Thursday 11th of March and Thursday the 25th of March. Further, that Council at a later date determine when to have meetings at alternative venues, except insofar as the above meetings are concerned, bearing in mind the Mayor's instruction to me a moment ago, and that these meeting dates and times be advertised on Council's website and in public spaces within Council's office as is required under the legislation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Gott. Any questions for the CEO on that report? If not, would somebody move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We move into item 5, Planning Regional Development. Item 5.1, the application for reduction in infrastructure charges, and Mr. Jones will present this report. Welcome, Mr. Jones.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mr. Jones.
Through the Chair, Council is in receipt of a request for 100% reduction of infrastructure charges relating to the reconfiguration of one lot into 3 lots on land situated at 12 Kennedy Esplanade, South Mission Beach. The application was approved by Council via delegated authority, subject to conditions on the 26th of October 2020. An infrastructure charges notice was issued for the amount of $58,679.10. The proposed development meets the criteria for eligible development outlined within the policy. The proposed development will be complementary and contribute positively to the Greater Mission Beach local plan area, as well as creating opportunities for local tradespeople to gain work. Council, the recommendation is that as the request to reduce infrastructure charges complies with the criteria set within the policy, and that it seeks to encourage development which provides significant economic benefit to the Cassowary Coast region, the Council agreed to a potential 100% reduction in infrastructure charges, subject to the development all works as required to comply with the reconfiguration of lot approval and other statutory requirements being completed prior to the 26th of October 2023. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Any questions for the officer? If not, would somebody move the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
Item 5.2, Delegations Report, and Mr. Horton will present this report. Welcome, Mr. Horton.
Welcome, Mr. Mayor and Council. How is everyone today? Hope everyone's well.
Very well, thank you, Mr.
Good.
Hall.
After last night's result, it could have been
After
a bit better,
last night's
but
result,
we'll go again. Don't worry, we'll be back. Give us 7 days, we'll be back. Council, through the Chair, for the planning decisions for the month, on page 130, Council, we had 81 for October. Last year at the same time we had 39. A lot of these approvals are a smaller type approval. You're talking more your dispensations and those types of things, Council. However, it leads to work, and as we're fully aware at the moment, everyone is busy in the district, building and so forth. So 81 approvals is 42 approvals above last year at the current time. So it's pleasing to see there. Council, the other main one is our housing approvals are starting to go on the up, which is on page 133. So we passed last year's total at the same time for the calendar year, so hopefully we can keep improving there, Mr. Mayor, as we go forward. The bigger one for the 5-year comparison is that we're up 47 approvals on the last 5 years overall on all our approvals in building. So we're hit the 404, and please be aware, Council, that's approvals. That's not all applications we've received. There's a lot more applications in the system that haven't been processed. So, and the other thing I should raise in our approvals, in our building and plumbing and drainage approvals, a lot of councils separate them out into separate approvals. We combine our applications simply because I get a better result in resolving the overall product. If a lot of cases we used to get a situation where we do a building application and a plumbing application separate on separate files, the building application would be finalised and the plumbing would be left alone and not finalised. So I changed the process many years ago to ensure that they were incorporated together, so when we got to the final point of approving a dwelling and someone to live in it, it was done all together. So when you look at these totals, they look at the totals of approvals. A lot of them combined. If I split them out like a lot of councils do, we're probably around the 800, pushing 1,000. So, you know, so there's a lot of difference. At some stage I might do that for council and just show how the other areas do that. Council, moving forward, we have 50 overall for the month there. The biggest one, as I said, we're up at 404. We had 68 approvals for the house. Total figures around our approvals is 38, just over 34 million, just over 17 million in house approvals in costings there. So, and at the same time, the progression of the calendar year was 72 approvals up from last year at the same time, council. So everything's looking favourable to us. Hopefully we keep to grow to the end of the year. The progression for the financial year for dwellings on page 149, council, we're just over, well, 10.8 million. Last year we were just over 5. So we're up $5 million in you know, buildings. So if you're looking at an average build of 300-something thousand, you know, to pushing 400,000 for an average house, so you get 5 million, so you can sort of work that out. Same thing, 43 more approvals than last year in the progression from July for the financial year so far in our progression totals. And on page 152, council, our building certifier and our plumbing and drainage officers, who are single people that do the whole area, did 62 inspections and 37 for plumbing, so 62 for building. The record searches for the month have been good. There's 50, council, that we did this month. Overall, if you can see on page 154, council, this year we've done, for the calendar year, 297. Last year we did 300. Remembering good and well, in August last year we got hit with a lot of searches through the Mayfair group in those 2-month period. So we've been pretty much, we're still on target. You know, we got hit with that between August and October, and we're level pretty much with last year. So there's still interest in the area on purchase and those types of things, council. Look, I'm happy to answer anything else, council, if you wish to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Baines.
What? Yes, Mr. Mayor. I mean, aside from not having our a previous councillor who always asked questions about 10A approvals rather than Class 1As, it's really encouraging to see the numbers on Class 1As increasing. Do you actually, are you equating that to this first home buyer benefits that are being put out by the government, or you think it's just there are other circumstances involved as well?
Through the chair, I think that's part of it, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of people seeking to sign contracts before those, you know, periods are up, which is December and March next year. You know, that's part of it. Plus, I think there's a lot of people looking to move to the regional area that I note, you know, that are inquiring about properties and land. We get a lot of inquiries through CRs and so forth from all around Australia, you know, looking to move to this area.
Sorry, so further to that, Mr. Chair, I mean, you know, being in the heart of the wet tropics, of course, and the best place to live in Australia, if not the world, it's a very encouraging thing to see. And I note that the incentive schemes are pushed out till March now officially, and with any luck, they may even push them out further. So,
yeah. Through the chair, I hope so, councillor.
Any further questions for the officer? Just a compliment about the planning department. I heard you say a few times there things are looking good, positive. In the wider community, 3 homes have sold in my street in the last month. I think the Queensland bubble is attractive to southern investors. The Premier got re-elected on the back of her strong protection of our border. And I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of investment looking for COVID-free territory. It's not sea change or tree change. They want to protect their health. And I think a lot of the Southerners are going to invest up here in the Queensland bubble because they want to protect their family's health. So it is going to be a positive 12 months coming up.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr Horton.
Thank
Somebody
you.
move the
Thanks,
recommendation, please. Moved by Councillor Farron-Lee, second by Councillor Pervin. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Council.
Item 6.1, asset sustainability. The Cardwell Cultural Precinct, and Mr Fisher will present this report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors.
Morning.
Mr Fisher.
Through the chair, councillors, this report today is in regards to the Balliol Cultural Precinct. The project has been around for a number of years, and I've provided there a very brief history of the project, and I would like to say that that's definitely not a complete history, and certainly recognise that there would have been a lot of community meetings and engagement that happened as part of the process in developing the concept. Following, I guess, that concept, there was an estimate done to stage the works in 2 stages, with stage 1 being the earthworks and roadworks. Council was successful in obtaining $290,000 a project, with 50% coming from the state government and 50% from council. In the report I provide 4 options, and I should note that the option 3 and 4, within those options there is a further option to either provide some extra disability parking or not. So in essence there are really 6 options, but obviously 4 main options there. I provide some, I guess, some pros and cons of each option. And I guess it's a challenge there with that space in terms of how it functions and how it's used, and I guess the options all allow for the future stage 2 works to happen. It's just how that space in terms of stage 1 is operating in the short term until stage 2 eventuates at some stage in the future. So the report, I'm effectively seeking direction from council on how council would like to proceed in regards to those options put before you today.
Thank you. Mr Fisher, any questions for the officer? Councillor Barnes.
Yes, good. Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Mr Fisher. This goes way back to 2015. This is something that it started through a RADF grant of roughly $7,000, which is funded by council. And this area that we're in conversation about now, it's a high use area. This is a current area where it's wet when it's wet, it's dusty when it's dry. And I do recognise that businesses are saying in Cardwell that they need more parking in Cardwell, but there's more options than here, I would say. This is, I'd like to support option 2, mainly for the reason being that this reflects on what this area, a percentage of Cardwell people went through a consultation period with a lot of council and other involvement, and I know this is funded now 50% by the state and 50% by the council, and I know we're only talking about stage 1, but I'm going to be supporting option 2 anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. I'd like to speak in support of option 4 for a number of reasons. Firstly, in terms of the RADF grant, that was acquitted, and the council of the day had a vision about what they wanted as the end product. This new council has a different vision, and it's built on the back of a commitment to asset rationalisation. And I think this would be counterproductive to put in more assets in terms of option 2. Option 4, the benefits for me are it allows for greater number of car parks and RV friendly parking, and the self-drive market that currently exists in the Queensland bubble because of COVID. There's RVs everywhere and they can't find space to park. It allows tourists easy access to the library, the arts centre and the visitor information centre and car parking right in front of those facilities. It does not restrict the access to the hotel. The ongoing two-way access provided is support for a local business. It still allows for stage 2 to be constructed in the future. And the next point, it allows for the street and RV parking to be closed off for events. By having entry and exit points formalised, it will be easier to close the street for any event that may happen there. And finally, it makes use of an existing asset, minimises maintenance, reduces mowing costs, and stage 2 can still go ahead if we go with option 4 today. And I'll flag at this point that I'll be voting for option 4. Any further comments, councillors? Councillor Millwood.
Through the chair, yeah, Mr Mayor, I'd like to agree with option number 4 for the same reasons that you just pointed out.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that.
Yep, well, thank you, Councillor Millwood. I just remind councillors that we have a commitment in our current budget to save $400,000 in asset rationalisation and to support option 2 flies in the face of the commitment we've got in the budget. We've got an unmodified audit in that previous report, but we still have to find this $400,000 in savings. So for me, this council's got a different vision. The previous council didn't talk about asset rationalisation as heavily as we are. The appetite wasn't there as it is now, and our community want us to lead on that issue. So I'll take any further comments. Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I'm going to lean towards option 4. I think it's a great use of the assets at the moment. We need more parking there, and it's identified. A great indication was the opening of the Bush Tucker Garden again on Monday. So there's another item for people to go and look at. We've got the information centre, we have the museum, we've got the telegraph office. It will become a hub that is utilised heavily. As a further comment, I was leaning towards the disability parking option out the front. But so a question through you, Mr Chair, if I may, to Mr Fisher. There's already a disability car park at the back of the facility and a full ramp there for access. Would there be any issue marking up one more or a third one at that back area to have the disability parking where they can go straight onto the ramp and straight up rather than not include more disability parking at all, but allow to not take up the room at the front?
Yeah, through the chair, if we wanted to achieve that, we could reline mark that existing car park within the grounds of that library, and dedicate more parks, because I guess through option 4 we are providing more parking on street to service that area, so that could meet that need.
So thank you, Mr. So we could achieve it very simply with just a bit of paint and put an extra spot or an extra 2.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, good pick up, Councillor Baines. We need to look after the disability sector for sure. Any further comments, councillors? We have a mover and seconded by Councillor Farinelli. Any further comments, councillors? All in favour? It's carried. And you're against, Councillor Baines? Carried 6-1. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Fisher. We now move on to general business. Any general business, councillors? No? Okay.
Yes,
Okay, Councillor Millwood.
Through the chair, yes. Just got to find my note here. Yeah, we had the formal opening of the new Tully Grandstand on...
Yesterday.
Was it yesterday? No, the day before.
Day before,
Tuesday.
day before, yeah,
Tuesday. Oh,
Tuesday.
excuse me. And I just wanted to again make mention that I would like to show my appreciation to everybody and the previous council, all the groups and individuals involved in seeing this project go from concept to completion. It's absolutely amazing, and I can't wait for the next footy game so we can have our gumboot throwing competition. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. I have taken out a short loan at 1% to pay for that prize money, so that's all locked in and ready to go. I'd also like to recognise the previous council, in particular Mayor John Cremastis, who flew to Brisbane to talk to Mick de Brenny, the Minister, and with the support of our local member Shane Knuth, and a couple of other locals that went on and Mr Horton was also involved in that delegation. So, yeah, I'd like to acknowledge the work that group did, but in particular the former Mayor John Cremastis. Councillor Chewy.
Yeah, good. Through the chair, just very briefly, I'd just like to shout out to the Mission Beach Lioness Club. As we know, the Lioness Clubs are folding, but they're wrapping up their term with service to community, and we have a red chair for domestic raising awareness for domestic violence, which will be installed very shortly at Mission Beach. And also they have just provided funding for a new shower trolley, which will be installed at the Mission Beach Aquatic Centre, so that people with disabilities are able to be assisted at the pool. So I congratulate the club. They're a very small club, but they work very, very hard to make things happen for the community. So a shout out to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Councillor Millwood.
Sorry, further to Councillor Chewy's discussion on the red chair, there's from the 25th of November to the 10th of December, you can host a walk against violence. So if you have the opportunity, please join in.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Any further general business, councillors? Councillor Baines.
Yeah, Baines this time.
Baines.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I would just like to throw a thank you to all the councillors who attended the Remembrance Day ceremonies yesterday, and the councillors who couldn't. I know there was apologies, so it was very, very well received. I've spoken to the presidents of all the RSLs, and they asked me to please pass their thanks on for the continued support of the Cassowary Coast Regional Council, especially in relation to all our service members, and we do thank you all for your service. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Remember to remember. We now move into committee. The live stream, is he okay with this now? If we shut off now?
Let's take the resolution first.
Yeah, somebody move that we go into committee. Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Barnes. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, councillors, would somebody move that we go back into committee, please? Moved by Councillor Barnes, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? It's carried. Over to you, Mr Huxon.
Recommend that the report be received and noted.
Yeah. Any questions for the officer in relation to item 8.1, Technology 1 software? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. And Mr Smart, you're back on for item 8.2, mate. Welcome back.
Councillors, Council's received an application for a water concession for a property on the Palmerston Highway at Pigeon Hill under the terms of the exceptional circumstances in Council's water concession policy, and I've made a recommendation that the consumption charge in this case be reduced because of the unusual circumstances, and I've recommended a charge of $111.65 be applied against that particular property rather than the $722.54 for the 6 months to June 2020.
Thank you, Mr Smart. Any questions for the officer? Moved by Councillor Pervin, seconded by Councillor Chewy. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. That draws our meeting to a close at 10:40.
One more, Mr. Mayor, if you may.
Yep.
Just one piece of general business that I did neglect earlier, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a beach clean-up being run out at the Coconuts this Saturday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's under the Clean Up Australia banner, so if anyone would like to come out and give us a hand, it would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Baines.
Thank you.
I'll declare the meeting closed at 10:41. Thank you.